My name is Wesley Curtis Smith. Here is my deep story. I was born October 1, 1927 in Ardmore, Oklahoma. My father was Harry Smith Sr. born in Shreveport, Louisiana in 1900. My mother Virginia, May, White, also known as Virgie, May, was born in 1906 in Ardmore, Oklahoma. At one brother Harry Smith Jr. This is my brother and his wife Catherine Smith. I had two sisters, one Bobby Jean who died when I was 12 years old. Then after my mother and father broke up, my mother had another daughter, Lonzetta Lancaster. My mom died giving birth to her. After my mom and dad has split up, my grandma who was living in Louisiana who had split up with my grandpa, she came to live with us. She could really cook. I can remember my brother and I, getting up and smelling the hot pancakes, and bacon, and coming home from school and smelling the roast, with potatoes, and carrots, and hot biscuits. We really loved it when she was around. She was like our mom. Fact, we called her, Mom. The extent of racial discrimination during the Oklahoma territorial period, which began with the run of 1889, that's when my mother's family came from Mississippi, and ended with statehood in 1907. When Oklahoma was no longer called Indian Territory but became a state called Oklahoma, undoubtedly one of the prime reasons Negroes migrated to Oklahoma was to escape racial discrimination. The opening of the Oklahoma District in 1889 paved the way for the migration of Negroes to a land where they thought an opportunity existed to enjoy those basic American rights which were denied them in most states of the American Union. From the extensive Negro migration to Oklahoma came an attempt by E. P. McCabe to establish a Negro state in Oklahoma Territory. He advocated reducing white political power in the territory by importing Negro immigrants in such numbers that eventually they would outnumber the whites. In 1892 he went so far as to predict that within a few years Congress would have 2 Negro senators from Oklahoma. Another result of the extensive Negro migration was the establishment of at least 27 all-Negro towns and 1 colony in Oklahoma and Indian territories. These towns were an outgrowth of the legal, social and political discrimination encountered by the Negroes in the Twin Terrace Ridgeries as well as in the South generally. When it became apparent that the all-Negro state plan would fail, Oklahoma Negroes sought to use the Republican Party as a vehicle to achieve their objectives. This study attempts to show how this party exploited the Negro voters, but generally failed to promote and protect Negro interests. The rise of racial discrimination leading to the adoption of Jim Crow laws both before and after statehood is discussed. The Posey tie-in of Negroes, whites, Republicans, Democrats, Frank France, Charles N. Haskell, and Theodore Roosevelt are given on racial discrimination. This study closes with a report of the reactions of Negroes to Oklahoma's first Jim Crow law after statehood. Oklahoma Negroes fought these laws in the courts until 1914, when they concluded that to obey the law was in the best interests of both races. Racial discrimination extended after statehood with the adoption of the Grandfather Clause in 1910. After a series of conflicting state and federal court decisions regarding the constitutionality of the law, the United States Supreme Court ruled in 1915 that the Oklahoma Grandfather Clause was unconstitutional. My brother and I both went to the Navy. First he did and then I did. Year or so later, we wound up fighting in World War II. When I got home from fighting in the war, I met and married a pretty little girl from Long Grove, Oklahoma named Mary, and her family had oil wells and a lot of out in Long Grove. When I met her, she would come to town to sell the pecans from the many pecans trees orchard that her family owned. We dated for a while and wound up getting married and moved to California where my brother was. We end up having 5 children and living the rest of our lives happily ever after. First we had Barbara and then Wesley Jr. and then Craig and Regina and Deborah. This is a picture of Barbara and Deborah, Barbara on the top and Deborah on the bottom, along with pictures of me. This is Craig. That's Regina, standing in the red behind Craig. This is Wesley Jr. I had one other daughter named Velma we called Chi-Chi that I don't have a picture of, but I had her out of wedlock before I got married, and I got a job at Lockheed Aircraft. I got word that they were up for the contract to build the stealth airplane. So that I would be prepared, when we did get the contract, in case we did, I went back to school and got a degree in engineering. We did get the contract. I worked on the first stealth airplane made by Lockheed Aircraft, and I worked for Lockheed until I retire over 48 years, and seldom that I ever missed a Sunday, in church. Where I was a member, an active member, of the Baptist Church. All of my life. I died, July 16, 2017.